understand that one of your research projects involve informal music learning practice.
It started probably when I was a teenager, actually, when I started wondering how popular musicians learn their instrumental skills, because I myself was having classical piano lessons, and you know, it was a mystery to me how popular musicians sort of did it, really. So that's driven my work for many, many years, and it ended up about 10 or 15 years ago doing a study of how popular musicians learn. And from that study I took the main characteristics of their learning practices and adopted them and adapted them for the school classroom. It was based on 5 things. One, that they learn by choosing their own music, therefore they're using music that they know and love and identify with. Secondly, they learn by playing by ear. As you know, everyone knows, they put on their own favourite music and just attempt to play along with it. Thirdly, they work both by themselves and with friends, and it's very important that they work with friends who share similar musical tastes. Fourthly, because of all this way of learning, their learning tends to be idiosyncratic, it's very personal, it's haphazard, it's not structured in the kind of progressive way that we normally try to structure music learning in formal environments. And also it often takes place without any teacher or adult or anybody who is able to you know, give them expert help. And fifthly, they tend to integrate all the skills of listening, composing, performing and improvising all the way through the learning process. And I simply adapted those for the school classroom. So we worked first of all in secondary schools, and the kids were asked to choose their own music, choose friendship groups, choose their own instruments, pick a song and attempt to copy it by ear from a recording.
So probably the practice was important.
Did it change my own musical practice? Yeah. I did start using those practices myself. So I found myself putting on some songs of one of my favourite musicians, Joni Mitchell, and you know, starting to learn to play the song and to sing it by ear, which I found a fascinating task, because although I have basic sort of ear skills and improvisation skills, I'd never actually sat down with a recording before and fully tried to copy it. And the interesting thing to me about that was I was doing this whilst I was at the beginning of my project taking the learning practices into the school.
All right.
And because I found that doing it myself opened my own ears, I added a question to the interviews that we did with the children. Since you've been doing this project, have you noticed any differences in the way you listen to music at home? And I'm so glad I added that question, because the answers to it have been fascinating. And a large number of kids said, yes, it had affected the way they hear music. And it made me realise, and it made them realise, that young kids who listen to popular music tend to focus entirely on the lyrics and the singing. And many of them actually said things like, before I did this project, I didn't realise there was any more to music apart from the lyrics.
Oh, interesting.
You know, and now it's what they call the underneath bits. The background music means more to me than the lyrics.
So you're also kind of saying that it doesn't matter just being the curriculum, right? So music being the curriculum, or even if we take popular music into the curriculum, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to have a fully experience of how to make music. So it's a method of pedagogy.
It's a pedagogy. That's absolutely right, Flavia, because as you know, popular music has been in the school curriculum here and in many other countries as well for many, many years. But what we've tended to do as teachers is to approach the popular music in the curriculum in the same way that we would approach classical music or any other kind of music from around the world. And therefore we weren't actually using the techniques that the musicians themselves used to create the music. So in a way what we had in the curriculum was a kind of not the real thing,
Right.
Children could listen to it, but there wasn't any development of their ears going on or any development of their skills going on that way. This wonderful project, Musical Futures, approached me and asked me to join them, and I then had the opportunity of doing that. And Musical Futures is now a major UK national project. It's also a project which is going on in Australia. We hope, as you know, that it's going to happen in Brazil. There are also parts of the USA and Canada where it's beginning to be used. And the Musical Futures project was funded mainly by the Paul Hamlyn Foundation. This way of bringing in popular musicians' learning practices into the classroom has, of course, affected the role of the teacher as well. The role of the teacher is to stand back at the beginning of the process, observe what the pupils are doing, try to sympathise and empathise with the goals that the pupils are setting for themselves, and only at that point start to step in and offer guidance, and also to act as a musical model by playing the instruments themselves or whatever. Now, this is a little bit different from the role of the teacher, of course, in a more standard pedagogic form, where the teacher is the one who knows. The teacher chooses, in the case of music, the teacher chooses the music. The teacher will tell the pupils which notes to play sometimes, how to play them, what order to play them in, and it comes from the teacher to the student. In this way, the student is given much more autonomy to make their own choices and to direct their own learning with their friends and to find their own route through the learning process. Now, as you can imagine, at the beginning of Musical Futures, quite a few of the teachers in the very, very early stages were quite worried about what was going to happen if we give students in school classrooms all this freedom. And of course, the first time that I tried this, in my very, very first London classroom, I thought the same thing. I had no idea if the technique would work or not. But luckily, it really has worked incredibly well. And what tends to happen is that after 2 or 3 lessons, the teachers begin to get pretty nervous because they're not sure where it's going to go. But after 3 to 4 lessons, most of the teachers are amazed at how highly motivated the kids have been, how well organised they've been, how they've got themselves into their friendship groups, how they've sorted themselves out, and how they've actually shown that they have musical abilities that very often the teachers didn't know they had. And a lot of our teachers have said it made them realise that previously they were not giving children enough credit for having as much ability as they actually do have. Of course, this is something that we trained classical musicians ourselves haven't usually done.
You're right.
Nowadays, with younger classical musicians coming up, some of them are what we might call bi-musical. They have a foot in either jazz or popular music or folk music, traditional music, and a foot in the classical camp. But they're still in a minority, I think. And in the formal education, one thing that we don't learn as musicians is how to play by ear or how to improvise. And there's an awful lot of music educators and teachers in this country and many places who are very highly proficient, trained classical musicians, but who don't really know how to play by ear or improvise themselves, and therefore don't know how to teach it. And this is why, instead of looking at what skills we have as trained musicians and music educators, I went to look at what skills those people who do know how to play by ear and improvise have, and bring those skills into the formal music education realm. And that's partly why, of course, teachers who are trained, if they've not really ever had the experience themselves of copying a recording by ear, it's quite a mysterious thing. It's quite worrying and frightening, and very revealing as well.
Yeah, I think that for both teachers and pupils, it's going to be an interesting experience, enriching experience. And what you said is also about the progress, right? So it doesn't mean that because you're not reading from the score that you're not progressing in your technique or in your musical skills, rather the opposite.
There's a kind of level of relaxation and also fun and experimentation, getting to know the instrument in a way which is more like the instruments are part of their body, you know, which is of course how we all want our instrument to feel.
Yeah, so you're talking about a lot of intrinsic motivation from the part of students, right?
Yes.
Because they choose their music, that's the music they want to play, so that's why they go and play by ear, even if their teachers think it's quite an advanced level. And how do you think that the teachers can help them in this negotiation or not?
Right, well this is an absolutely crucial point, and it's something I've been looking at in more detail in my instrumental project. Right. So teachers help by obviously making suggestions for how to hold the instrument. For example, a teacher could show a pupil who has tried to get a note and they can't get it. The teacher will allow them to try for a while and then step in and say, why don't you put your finger here on this string? That's the first note. Mm-hmm. It's about watching what the child is doing, listening to them, trying to gauge where they're attempting, trying to gauge what they're attempting to do, and then thinking, how can I help this pupil achieve this particular goal? If I hadn't done a lot of philosophical and theoretical work, would I have done the same practical work in the classroom? I think in a nutshell the answer is no. Mm-hmm. Because if we're going to do work which changes practice, then that comes out of a whole wealth of knowledge and understanding, doesn't it? And that's why we come to university, and that's what we're doing at universities, is expanding our minds and helping our students to expand their minds so that they can have a fresh look at practice with new eyes and new understanding.
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Lucy. It's been lovely to talk to you.
It's been lovely to talk to you too, Flavia. I'll see you at the next tutorial.
Yeah. See you.